Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Welcome to Eugene Cannabis TV. We're back like a bad debt. We're here again. Rev Will with us, and we want to talk about initiatives starting out. First, we have Oregon, the OCTA initiative, which now has turned into M80, Measure 80. That's the Oregon Cannabis Taxation Act, which will legalize personal use for 21 and above. You can grow your own. You can grow hemp. It's all good, and it's going to be on the ballot in Oregon. So we encouraging people to register to vote. You need to re-register to vote by October 16th. That's an important date. October 16th is the deadline to register to vote in the November 6th election.
You know, as far as that goes, I know that we've talked a little bit about it, but when they say that we can grow industrial, it's interesting for me. I know we talked about the verbiage in it being aligned in some way that makes that possible. For me, I'd really like to have a lawyer tell me that that's true, because, you know, last thing I heard was the federal government still has that hemp tax stamp that you're supposed to have in order to grow anywhere. And if this is a loophole for industrial, Floyd should be real grateful. So then I'll quit calling them impotent.
Well, I'm really anxious for the initiative to pass, because I just want to see what's going to happen overall. How is the state government going to react? How is the federal government going to react? It's going to be incredible. I'm just loving it.
So let's make them do the dance, man. Find out what's going on. That's great. Let's make it happen.
Definitely. And to do that, we need registered voters. I've been an activist close to 20 years. The most common thing I hear from people is, I don't participate. I'm not registered to vote. I don't participate.
Right.
And I always come back and say, well, look at what the people are voting. Look what they're doing to us. So, but now more importantly than ever, we literally do have a legalization initiative on the ballot in Oregon on November 6th. So now is the time to get registered and get your friends registered to vote.
Yeah, the other part of it is that not all the parties are bad parties anymore. I mean, we used to only have the Democrats and Republicans, which were basically a flip of the same coin. But now you have the Pacific Party, you have the Greens Party, you have the Libertarians, you know. So understand, you have choices of lesser evils that you can join in order to support this one act. If you don't do anything else, please register to vote. Get out there and vote, make it happen.
We also need to make Ellen Rosenblum the acting AG of Oregon. We need to get her elected in November 6th, so she'll be full-fledged and in office for a full term.
That would be awesome.
So that's another thing that needed to happen on November 6th. Montana, some bad news in Montana. They had a legalization initiative, but they came up short. The Secretary of State's office said that they had fewer than 18,000 valid signatures, and they needed 48,000 more, so there's just no way they can make it. But if you drop down the story a little bit, and this is what it's all about. He said that the initiative had to change the proposal's language at least 3 times because of objections by state officials. That delayed their signature gathering efforts. So right there, the delaying tactic right there that
But I like this too, where it says we didn't make it, we just ran out of time, we just got going too late. She said, but we're not giving up. When we do it next time, we'll be more prepared and we'll have the language ready.
Yeah, that's true. And the bad news is that this is an election year, and that's why it's a shame not to have it, because election year is your best year of turnout, and that's ideally the best year for an initiative of this caliber. I assume that they're going to have this ready to go in 2 years. Maybe they'll wait for the next presidential election in 4. You know, I don't know. But anyway, and it goes on to say that it says the failure of this initiative means that the final tally of states where the initiative will be on the ballot is Colorado, Oregon, and Washington, which leads us into the story on Washington.
There it is.
Washington Marijuana Initiative has a good week. It said this has been a good week for I-502, the Washington State Initiative to legalize, tax, and regulate marijuana, and its sponsors, New Approach Washington. Over the weekend, the campaign racked up big bucks with a handful of six-figure contributions. Just before that, a new poll had it with a promising lead. So things are looking good. The poll was saying that 55% said yes, only 32% said no. That's a 23-point lead. And let's see, good. Big bucks came from a handful of donors. $450,000 from Progressive Insurance founder and drug reform sugar daddy Peter Lewis. By the way, that's why I'm insured with Progressive. I went through Progressive because I like what this guy does. Another $450,000 from the lobbying arm of the Drug Policy Alliance. $250,000 from TV travel show host Rick Steves, who had already kicked in another $100,000, and $100,000 from the ACLU of Washington. And Rev Will has a little comment about Oregon and ACLU and what happened.
Well, for me, I've gone to Dank and I've gone to the ACLU before, and I've definitely tried to talk to them about, if nothing else, the discrimination that we have to deal with continuously. And that what I hear from them is that we don't have the money to take on cases that we don't think that we can win. I'm sorry, I thought you were there to protect my civil liberties. I didn't know that it had to be something that was totally winnable. I just thought that it was an atrocity that we are not supposed to drive, we're not supposed to work, we're supposed to go home in order to take our medicines out of public view, something that no other patient with any kind of drug that's going into their system has to deal with. Why are we hit with this major, it's supposed to be an intimidation factor, you know, because if we're seen out in public and we're doing this, then anybody can walk up to us and then basically citizens arrest us. But how is that right when patients don't just get sick at home? I mean, I think it's insane that we have to deal with this. Also, if you think about it, the doctors have to give us a recommendation. But for everybody else, they prescribe what's wrong with them. Now, folks, I mean, you really need to listen and pay attention to the fact that we're supposed to be in a discrimination-free zone. That's one of the things that we pride ourselves on here in this area. I'm sorry, but we don't have a discrimination-free zone. If we did, we wouldn't have to deal with this kind of thing. And right here it says also in Washington, going back to that for a minute, it wasn't all good news this week. Word came out late last week that Steve Seritz, the state's most prominent purveyor of medical marijuana, and other opponents of I-502 have filed a lawsuit to keep the measure off the November ballot. They claim that passage of I-502 would be ruinous to the state budget and that the Office of Financial Management is conspiring with the I-502 campaign by not yet releasing a fiscal impact statement. But as Holcomb noted, the agency has until April 10th to do so. Do you understand, folks, that here in this state, we could make a difference? We could really do things in a way that would be so much more beneficial if we would have marijuana so that, and hemp per se, industrial and medical and spiritual, and recreational. We would be able to have industries come into the state that would put people to work. We would be able to grow in the fallow fields that are sitting out there right now with absolutely nothing going on with them. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Hopefully, you're all going to wake up sooner rather than later, because we really do need to make a difference, and this is the one thing in the world that can help us right now, right here in this state.
Yeah, and then the biggest objection to the I-502 in Washington is activists are concerned that added provisions that would impose a new limit on active THC in the blood of drivers. Those critics argue that the provision would effectively criminalize driving by medical marijuana patients and other regular users. So that's been the main criticism of that initiative, is it sets the THC level way too low. Luckily, we don't have that problem in our initiative. So
no, we don't, but as far as Washington goes, understand, folks, it stays in your system for extended periods of time, and they know this. So you could smoke on the first day of the month and be pulled over on the 28th day of the month, and that hit or 10 that you took on the first day are still going to be in your system. That's why they want this kind of thing going on. It's just another way of controlling us and actually trying to get us into the prisons so that they can keep us there until we pay them to get out. It's basically involuntary servitude.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever told you about this. I went to bail a friend of mine out of jail one time, and it was after hours, and I had to push on the buzzer, you know. And I thought of this right when she answered, and I said, I'm here to, she said, can I help you? And I said, I'm here to pay a ransom. And she said, pardon me? I said, I'm here to pay a ransom. She said, what do you mean ransom? I said, well, you know, when you keep somebody a prisoner and you won't let them go until you give them some money. Oh, she said, you mean bail? I said, oh, yeah, I guess you'd call it bail. I kind of think of more like a ransom. She got real surly after that.
Oh, yeah, they do. They don't like being called on what they're actually doing. They like to have this image that they're doing it for the benefit of the whole.
Yeah, it's like Springfield with their new justice center.
Oh, yeah.
Springfield doesn't know the word justice. That's an oxymoron. If you want to see a real live oxymoron, go down and look at the new courthouse there in Springfield, and it's where it says Springfield Justice Center.
Yeah, I don't see it happening. So what do we have?
Yeah, and then the Department of Justice Sentencing Commission, interesting, in a congressionally mandated annual report to the U.S. Sentencing Commission on the operation of federal sentencing guidelines, the U.S. Department of Justice said continuing increases in the federal prison populations and spending are unsustainable, and called on the Commission to work with other stakeholders to reduce federal corrections costs. But the report failed to address the single largest factor driving the growth in the federal prison population, the huge increase in the number of federal prisoners doing time for drug offenses. Surprise. According to data compiled by Drug War Facts and based on Bureau of Justice Statistics reports, in 1980 there were some 19,000 federal prisoners, with some 4,500 having a drug offense as their most serious offense. By 2010, the number of federal prisoners had increased tenfold to more than 190,000, and a whopping 97,000 are doing time for drug offenses, also a tenfold increase. The percentage of drug offenders increased during that period from roughly 25% of all federal prisoners in 1980 to 51.7% in 2010. As the Department of Justice noted in its letter, the first decade of that period corresponded to the end of decades of increases in crime and violent crime, leading to record high crime rates, which had generated a number of policy responses, including more police, harsher sentencing, and an increased emphasis on illegal drugs. But as the Department of Justice also noted, beginning in 1992, violent crime has dropped consistently, and the U.S. is now safer than it has been in decades.
Yeah, I'll call bull on that.
Okay, so anyway, that's where we're going with that. So we need to wrap it up and get on to the next segment. So we're going to take a break here, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
Welcome back. We had our long break, and we're refreshed, and ready to go again. This is kind of caught my eye, and I hadn't heard this before. Belize ponders marijuana decriminalization. The reason Belize catches my eye, at least, is that was where our friend Bill Condi left. What year? Remember the year? I don't remember either, but Anyway, he did get caught with I believe it was a quarter pound, and I remember him telling me that he was really disappointed because it was Mexican. He said it wasn't all that good. He said to get caught with substandard pot was really an embarrassment.
But see, there's a difference between William and I, and part of that is the fact that why do you have Mexican herb in the first place?
Yeah.
Okay, for me, it's like local, local, local. You don't go out of the state, you don't bring people in the state to pick it up. You don't take it other places. You know, this brings up a point for me, like with all these head shops. Remember how they went through the big trauma of having bongs and stuff busted in Pennsylvania, so the DEA came in here.
The Tommy Chong bust, huh?
Then they started the big deal of, oh, we can't talk about marijuana in here because we got busted and the feds are looking at us and stuff, and I'm going, look, you fools. If you weren't selling bongs in another state, then you wouldn't have to worry about the feds coming in here. They're not going to walk in here because I walk in and say, excuse me, can I get a bong? Excuse me, can I get a medical utensil? Can I get something so I can smoke my medicine in? And you think they're going to break down the doors and come in here and arrest you? What bull crap. It just shows how you are people who are taking care of people out there who are using it recreationally. More so than you are people medically or spiritually. Because you don't care about whether or not we have a solid reason for being there. It's my medicine. It's my spiritual ally. These are things that are valid reasons for me to have this in my life. Not to sit down and smoke until I can't stand up anymore, or the fact that it's going to, you know, oh, I can actually function now because I'm so stoned. No, 30 years ago I had medical patients walking up to me and talking to me about how I was helping them tremendously and how they honored me for helping them. With what? With MS, which was something that it took 20 years from the time I was taking care of these people for Montel Williams to stand up and go, oh, excuse me, I have MS, and so I need help medically. Oh, good. Changed his life around, saved him from blowing his brains out. A Navy SEAL, somebody who has the ability to deal with most anything, the thing that saved them was twofold. One of them was medical marijuana, the other was seeing his children's faces floating in front of them. Understand, folks, this is an atrocity what's going on with us. You don't care because it's not happening in your families. Okay, we're going to talk about families in a little bit, so I'll let that one go. But being in Belize, and you know, like I said about William having Mexican pot, where'd you get it from, William? Mexico? So you're dealing with Mexicans in Mexico. Interesting. That was a long time ago. Yeah. I didn't support it then, I don't support it now. Keep your hands off our state, leave us alone, let us get on with our business.
So yeah, anyway, Condi went made an agreement with the law enforcement, with prosecutors. He'd go, if he left the country for 5 years, they wouldn't prosecute. So he went to his wife's home country of Belize. And
I bet you Dambo wish he got that offer.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so Belize, I'm really wondering if William's working on this down there.
Yeah, we have different pictures of William.
It says the English-speaking Central American nation becomes the latest in the region attempting to find new, more effective ways of dealing with drug use and drug trafficking. Earlier this year, Guatemalan President Otto Perez Molina spearheaded legalization discussions at the Summit of the America, a process that will continue next month. More recently, Uruguayan President Jose Mujica floated a proposal for a state monopoly on marijuana sales there, and Mexico's presumptive president-elect Enrique Peña Nieto has said he is open to legalization discussions. So far, the U.S. has held firm to its prohibitionist line, but the trickle of dissent over drug policy is threatening to turn into a torrent.
Okay, so here we go again. The bully on the block.
Yeah.
Here it is, folks. Here it is, right here, black and white, telling you like it is. The U.S. says, you can't do it. You got to do it my way. Same thing with the states here. When are the attorney generals going to stand up of all these states that have it legalized and tell the federal government to leave us alone? States' rights. And understand, the bottom line on this whole thing is the federal government works for us, and they're not listening to us. And they're using us in this process to create these big prison systems that they use because they make big money off the food, off the prisoners, off the people who are working in there. It's all just a scam, and you folks can't see it. And we can't even get on mainstream TV. We haven't talked about that yet either.
Yeah, that's true. It says the initiative is driven by increasing evidence that the current legislation clutters the courts and the prisons with primarily a marginalized segment of our population. The added impact of a permanent criminal record further disadvantages this already marginalized group as it establishes a barrier against meaningful employment. This is further supported by international trends towards decriminalization, said the press release from Prime Minister Dean Barrow.
Right. Well, given this is great too. The next two paragraphs here. Given its increasing problems with violence and criminality generated by drug trafficking networks that use Belize as a springboard for cocaine exports to the U.S. and Canada, the country's police and criminal justice system could benefit from not having to use its scarce resources dealing with small-time marijuana smokers in a place where the habit is common. It is encouraging to see Belize's government join the growing number of countries calling for alternatives to the criminalization of people who use drugs. This proposal is also notable because Belizean law enforcement officials and agencies are the ones pushing it forward. It is good to see government acknowledging the harms of marijuana criminalization, which most negatively affects society's marginalized communities. Couldn't say it any better if I'd have written it myself, because understand that's exactly what we've been saying this whole time. Right now, we were just talking a moment ago about going on the air on KEZI or KVAL or KMTR or any of those stations that are out there. No, were you there when we did the Hemp Fest this year? Were you there when we did the Hemp Fest last year? Have you been there ever when we did the Hemp Fest? How can you possibly know about what we're trying to do if you're never there? But you'll show up out at the Tayberry Festival, outside of town. We are inside town. We're right over at Maury Jacobs Park. You could have been there in a heartbeat. You don't listen to us. You don't talk to us. You go to the same people who are willing to go along with your program. I don't want to go along with your program. I don't want to have anything to do with it. Understand, the only reason that I have a medical card is because I have medical illness. You really need to wake up, people, to the fact that we are being abused in this process. We are being, it's just so hard when you're losing families and you're losing members. All you cancer people out there, the people in your families who have cancer, why aren't you outraged that the federal government knows that there are solutions out there that have hemp orientation, marijuana orientation, that would make a difference, and you can't get it, and you don't want it because the government tells you it's illegal. But understand, any prescription drug they give you, because the FDA says it's okay, look at the FDA's track record. If you look at their track record and see how many people have died from drugs that they said were okay, they weren't. But you're willing to take a chance on them because it's the FDA. You're not willing to take a chance with marijuana because the same FDA says that it's illegal and that it's harmful with no viable, visible proof. Where is a person who has died from smoking pot? One in this country, anywhere.
Yeah, it's like, they can't let kids use pot, but so now the kids are smoking, what's it called, spice?
God.
Yeah, so instead of pot, which is benign, now they're smoking a nasty substance that's causing real harm because they can't smoke pot, which is illegal.
My understanding is that there was a young man recently who had medical issues, and his mother finally broke down and got him to try herb, and it basically saved his life. How many of you have people who have cancer in your lives that you would really love to see live much, much longer than they're going to with much less pain if they had smoked pot instead of going through the massive, or in conjunction with the chemotherapy? Because my biggest complaint about this is the fact that You can't tell your doctors the truth about what you're doing and have them respond in an intelligent way when you can't tell them that because you're smoking marijuana, you're doing 1/3 or half of the drugs that they recommend. That you're not a couch potato because you're smoking herb. Okay?
People are waiting for an organ transplant or drug tested, and they come up positive for marijuana, they come off the list.
Pull them off the list, you know? I mean, understand, folks. The things that go on with us could be related to other things that have happened in the past that were warnings about how bad it's going to get. I mean, they're talking about building these movable prisons for FEMA so that they can arrest people that they consider are hazardous to our country. Understand the things that I'm saying to you right now today, 110% are all things that they don't want you to hear. If we were on a mainstream TV, and I challenge any of the mainstream TVs to bring in any of their drug experts from anywhere in this country, and myself and others will sit up there and debunk all the crap that they're going to put out to you. Ask Supreme Court Justice Francis Young, who sat down and said, hey man, this is the most benign medicine out there, and they totally said, you don't count. And that's what they do, but they're not accountable. They're not accountable. When it comes time, and if marijuana is ever given the okay to work with cancer and stuff, hope it's before and not after your family member has a need. Because we've been yelling, screaming, trying to get your attention this whole time. You think that we're funny and weird because we may dress a little differently, wear our hair a little differently. Understand, get past all that, folks, to what we're saying. We're trying to save your family members as well as our own. We're trying to save all the people in this country who have an opportunity to do something a little bit different. It's a plant, and understand the roots, just like valerian root, just like ginseng, are things that are very helpful for you. You might want to take a look before it's too late.
Like our friend Brother John says, reciprocity for all drug war victims that aren't dead.
Ah, yes, I want my Geneva Convention rights. And with that, we're going to end
That's right.
this
We
show.
have to wrap it up for this week, and we appreciate you dropping in. Be sure to check next week, and we'll have some more information for you. Thank you,
If you have
Reverend Will.
information for us, send it in.
There you go. Yes, I'd like to hear from you. Yeah, right.
We'd like to know what's going on with the brother in Hawaii.
You bet. We got to wrap it up. What
Gotta
time is it
go.
here? Thank you.